Hello and welcome once more to the English Teacher's Welsh Board Guide to English Literature. Today we're going to be looking at how to create an A-star empathy response. Alright, before we begin, let's remind ourselves once more of the two exam papers that utilise this kind of question. First, we have the Unit 1 Prose and Poetry, a 2-hour paper, 2 sections. First section we're looking at prose from other cultures. Again, that's your Mice and Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings, Chandler's Secrets. Second section is the poetry question. The other exam paper that uses the empathy response is Unit 2A. Again, a 2-hour paper. The structure is exactly the same as section A of the first, with an extract and choice of 2 questions. And there are a variety of texts you might be using for this. It could be a Shakespeare's Othello, Much About Nothing. And Inspector Calls is the most likely one here, with Heroes as well as your novel, or Resistance, About a Boy. You could also be looking at Pride and Prejudice, Silas Marner, Lord of the Flies, Christmas Carol, Blood Brothers, View from a Bridge. You get the idea. Hopefully one of those are yours. Okay, now, this is the kind of question you'd expect to see of an empathy response. Basically, an empathy response is you pretending that you are the character. However, you have to make sure you do certain things in order to get the same marks. Here's the question. Imagine you are George at the end of the novel. Obviously we're looking at Mice and Men. Think back over your time with Lenny during the novel and consider the impact he had on you. Write down your thoughts and feelings, remembering how George would speak when you write your answer. And the last sentence is pretty much going to be the same for any kind of text that you've been studying this year. Thoughts and feelings, and again you have to imagine that you are a certain character. But how do we answer this? And this is where hopefully you know the answer already. So I've got 2 tasks for you, and you'll need to pause this video so you can answer them yourself. Firstly, what do you need to do in an empathy question in order to achieve 20 out of 20, which is the A star? So what kind of things do you have to show in your response? And secondly, what methods should you use in order to accomplish this? So what's the technique that you're going to use in order to achieve perfect marks? I recommend that you pause this video now, spend a couple of minutes just revising your own knowledge before we continue. Okay, so let's look at what the exam board wants us to do, because the mark scheme for an empathy question is exactly the same as if you were looking at an essay question, you know, how is loneliness presented, or how is the character Curly presented. It's split into 3 out of the 4 assessment objectives. Now these are the skill areas that you're marked against. AO1 is basically your ability to write correctly using terminology. Now this is even more important this year with the strengthening of the exam, so looking for you to use terminology and basically to write correctly. AO2 is your ability to analyse language, form and structure. AO4 is the social historical context, your ability to use historical knowledge. And again, this is something they're going to be really pushing from now on. So for AO1, let's have a quick look. To achieve perfect marks, you need to make sure that you use the relevant evidence. So your quotation, your detail needs to be as good as it can be. And that includes things such as only quoting the parts of a text that you need rather than long sentences. You may here be using the ellipsis. You may also be using square brackets to add things. The best way to do this is to integrate your quotation. So make it seem almost as if the quote you're using is part of your own writing. You need to be able to speculate as well, which means you need to be able to say, it could show us this, it might also mean that. That leads in nicely to alternative interpretations. And you also need to be able, at the highest level, as we can see here, handle a text with confidence. Make it seem to the marker you know exactly what you're talking about. You understand these texts, that you're able to move from very specific parts. So you know this could be a certain word to the entire text, so the impact that this phrase has on the entire novel. Secondly, for AO2, you need to be able to make sure that you can explore the impact that structure has. That could be sentence structure, the whole text structure has on the impact and meaning. You need to make sure that you're able to explore and evaluate, and this is what our A-star students do, evaluation means that you are able to say, well, why has the writer done this? Why has the writer put this in this way? AO4, our social historical context, you need to be able to obviously explain within your work how the context at the time the novel was written impacts on that. So for instance, if we're looking at Inspector Calls, that could be the sinking of the Titanic and why that is relevant, because it shows the sinking of these capitalist ideas, the empire, that sort of thing. We also need to look at literary traditions as well, and that again is very much a high-end A-star ideal. How were people writing at that time and why? You also need to be able to show how over time, so that, you know, how are your thoughts on the novel different maybe from those people in the 1930s? But let's look at the technique, shall we, the method. Again, you're more than welcome to pause this video at any point to note this down. Indeed, I recommend that you do so. Two areas of our method here: planning, which is key, absolutely key to achieving A star, and the writing. Now, again, empathy question is the same as the essay. You will have 40 minutes. I recommend that you spend about 10 minutes planning this. The better your plan, the easier your answer will be, because you will know exactly what you're writing, you know the order that you're going to be writing it in. You'll just be prepared and you can just confidently continue with a full answer. So the planning method here is, after you've underlined the key parts of the question, you know, which character you're supposed to be, whereabouts are you supposed to be writing from, because sometimes they don't just ask you from the end of the novel, they might ask you from midway through a text. So that's really key you remember that. What you need to do really is consider 3 to 5 key areas which you can refer back to when writing as a character. What you need to also do in an empathy response is use quotes. You still need to use quotes in an empathy response, so you need to note those down as well. The writing, it depends on the task here. You might be asked to write a letter, a diary, something like that. And the difference between an empathy task and a traditional essay is that you need to write creatively. You know, you are trying to write as if you are the character, and the closer you are to writing in their style, the better your empathy, the higher chance you have of getting that A star. Now, it's not very clear what you need to do with the quotations, whether you need to put them in quotation marks or not. The example I'm showing you will not use those, but there's nothing that says you can't do that to show that you are quoting from the text. At every opportunity though, you need to make sure when you're using those quotes, those key areas, you're writing as if you are the character, you know, considering how they would feel at that point. And what you need to remember is that this is a little like creative writing, but students need to demonstrate a strong understanding of the text and character. So how will this look? Well, this is our question once more, just to remind you. So we need to be imagining we are George at the end of the novel. We need to think back over our time with Lenny, so we know our focus is obviously about Lenny. And we need to consider the impact he has had on you. Notice it's you, not the character George. We need to make sure that we write down how we think and feel about those aspects. And we also need to write as if we were George. Okay, well, so this is my plan, my 3 to 5 points. You can see I've got more here, because if I can use my timing effectively, I can get more in. So I'd obviously look back at walking to the ranch and giving advice to Lenny. So I'm noting this down because that's what you need to do. You don't get no marks for your plan, so there's no need to write it in full sentences. I would then consider the first day on the ranch. I will then consider working with Lenny and how I feel about that. I'd look at Lenny with the puppies. I could look at the trouble that he had in Weed and what because I'm now thinking as the character, had to do. The fight with Curly is an obvious aspect. Killing of Curly's wife. George and Lenny with the other outsiders is another point we can look at when we see Lenny with Crooks, Curly, their cooks, Candy, Curly's wife. And finally, obviously, you can't write about George and Lenny's relationship without looking at the shooting at the end of the novel. What I would need to also do with each of these is to get quotes. So I need to make sure I've got 1 or 2 quotes that I can use, and that demonstrates your knowledge of the novel. But how does this look as an answer? Well, here we are. So again, it's just like creative writing. However, I need to demonstrate that I understand the text and I understand the character, because it works a bit like a creative character essay. And that's important to remember. It's a creative character essay. So, and I apologise for the lack of an accent here. I had to do it, but I couldn't believe our dream is over. Without that crazy bastard, I don't want to live off the fat of the land anymore. I knew that piece of jailbait would ruin it for us. I knew that big bastard couldn't control himself around them poison. I should have took him away when we saw her, especially after what happened in Weed. He just loves soft things too much. The damn mouse was a bad omen, and the puppy lived longer than I thought. But he wasn't all bad. Some of my favourite memories are just him and me, sitting round a fire, beans with no ketchup. I can hear him crying like a cat even now, talking about our future. Just looking in huge face when he would think on them green and red and blue rabbits still makes me smile. I can't ever go back to that place now. I can't ever say our dream out loud. It just reminds me of that final moment, the gun in the back of his head, sitting in the same pool that had made us feel happy. Now it just makes me feel unhappy. Even as I finger the trigger, you were still the same crazy bastard. No idea what was about to happen, or even the trouble I had to get you out of. Again. But I can't be mad. I was never mad. So that's just an extract. And that for me would be my opening. But you can see that all the way through I sound exactly as if I am George from the novel. It's almost as if Steinbeck himself has written that, hopefully. That's me being a bit egotistical. But all the way through there are quotations from the text showing my understanding. And that's exactly what you need to be doing. Okay guys, so let's recap very quickly. Empathy questions are a creative character question, but you still need to show the same skills as you would do in a traditional essay. Plan as advised, write as if you are the character, making sure you use quotes all the way through, and make sure you give yourself time in that half an hour when you're writing to proofread. So thank you, well done. Hopefully if you do those things you will achieve A star. The link on this site shows you how to access the past papers, so you may want to look at those for your future revision. And remember, it's content, method, timing. Content, remember the text. Method, remember how to answer the question. Timing, perform it in the time, and that's all you need and you'll achieve A star. So this is the English teacher. Thank you very much.